Sagiri flashes back to her childhood to when she became inspired to emulate her father's sword skills after witnessing him execute a convicted storyteller whose decapitated body did not realize it was already dead after finishing his tale. Flashing forward to an execution, Sagiri is praised by the magistrate's men for performing well for a woman. Although she accepts their praise, Sagiri finds herself burdened with the life she has taken. This fear becomes apparent to Yamada Isaeman Aizen, who reprimands Sagiri, since the condemned will suffer if she possesses fear and doubt. Despite telling him that she will strive to work on this flaw, Sagiri fears again after beheading her next convict and questions as to how she can overcome the fear and doubt that is within her heart. In the present, while placing a mask on Gabimaru, Sagiri believes that her answer would possibly be a life that she could easily take without question. At Edo, the death row convicts recruited for the expedition are gathered for a briefing with the shogun Tokugawa Narayoshi and his retainers present. If you are liking this video, then don't hesitate to like this video, and to see more content like this, subscribe to our channel. So let's continue the video. Sagiri recognizes a few criminals amongst the crowd and hears Gabimaru complaining to take his mask off to breathe easily and see the shogun, which she denies. After explaining to the criminals on how they will be pardoned for their crimes if they manage to return back with the elixir of life from Shinsenkyo, Sagiri notices and recognizes a criminal named Adachi Matagoro as he becomes pleased to know that he can continue killing without consequence if he receives the pardon, and wonders to herself if he would be the perfect person for her to cut down without fear or hesitation. After letting out a yawn, Gabimaru is recognized by a kunoichi named Yuzuriha sitting behind him and hears her expressing her disappointment with his appearance and apprehension despite his infamous reputation. Gabimaru then gives a shallow apology in response. Seeing him unenthusiastic, Sagiri wonders if Gabimaru is as dangerous as the rumors credit him and looks towards her blade for an answer. She then becomes spooked upon seeing her blade reflecting Gabimaru's bloody visage. Rather than go over the details of the island as the criminals start to complain, a retainer gives permission for the criminals to remove their masks to show them a sergeant blooming with flowers, explaining to them that this was a result of the island after he became the only survivor out of the 60 men who were sent on the last expedition. This causes the criminals to worry that the island is dangerous. A retainer then reprimands them since he believes that the expedition to paradise is a courtesy from the shogun despite them being on death row. After one of the criminals named Mirubai questions the possibility of the elixir of life not existing on the island, the retainer tells them that they are allowed to leave if they do not wish to take part in the mission, which becomes favorable for one of the criminals who chooses to walk out. However, the criminal is beheaded by Aizen as a consequence of this choice. The retainer informs the criminals that if they wish to partake in the expedition, then they will be constantly monitored by one of the Yamada Isaemans present and will be executed if they do anything irrational. He also tells them that they must keep their monitor alive in order to step foot on the return ship and avoid execution. Hearing this, Gabimaru asks Sagiri, as she holds her blade down on his neck, if this was true and is reassured. Although he accepted this, Sagiri becomes confused on whether Gabimaru was acting brave or was just simple-minded. After being called over by the shogun, the retainer follows his orders in demanding that the criminals reduce their numbers to the limited number of people the ship can board and the few seamen that are available. While the other criminals become confused by what he meant, the criminal Azachobe makes it clear to them, by struggling a convict next to him, that they have to kill one another until only a few are left standing, as evidenced by the fact that the retainer's not batting an eye to this action. The retainer tells him that he is right, but that they must do so while keeping their hands restrained at all times. As the massacre begins, the retainer sees the shogun entertained by the spectacle and criticizes him in his head on how pointless the massacre is, since they will all be useless by the time the brawl is over. The shogun then wonders as to who the elite criminals are among the skirmish, and is informed by his retainer that they are the Bandit King Azachobe, the kunoichi Yuzuriha, the Blade Dragon, or 8 provinces unparalleled Tamiya Gantetsusei, the Giant Rokuroda, and the Hollow Gabimaru, who confuses the retainer as to why he isn't moving from his spot. During a massacre, Sagiri is approached by Aizen, who believes that she is overwhelmed by the sight, which prompts him to warn her that what she will face on the island will be more brutal, and asks if she was prepared to kill when the time comes. He also admits to her that he does not believe that she is suited for the job and that she should rather focus on living life quietly as a woman. While enduring his criticism, Sagiri tells Aizen that she would have chosen that life if she had the option, but recalls from her childhood on how it is unavoidable that death centers around everyone in the Yamada clan regardless if they wield a sword or not. Sagiri is then targeted by 3 criminals who attempt to make an escape. Rather than have Aizen defend her, Sagiri steps forward to behead them herself, while in her mind refuses to quietly accept her fate as an executioner. Having taken another life, Sagiri starts to feel her fear taking over and becomes conflicted with herself. However, Sagiri regains her composure after hearing Gabimaru speak his mind to the retainers on how it is never okay to kill people, and asks if there was any other way to select the qualifiers, with another reason being that not all the murderers present wanted to kill of their own free will. Seeing as how he is not willing to follow the order he has been given, the retainer tells Gabimaru that he can choose to forfeit his chance to receive the pardon and offers a criminal a spot on the expedition if he were to kill Gabimaru. Favoring this, a criminal goes up to Gabimaru to try and attack him with a rock. Gabimaru tries to reason with the criminal, but hears him refusing to listen, and that his only option is to die if he wasn't going to fight back, having been left with no other choice but to kill and be burdened with the lives he has taken, which catches Sagiri's attention upon hearing. Gabimaru murders the criminal standing before him. While the others become horrified by what they saw, Sagiri realizes based on Gabimaru's words from before that she needed the resolve to carry the burden of her fear and the lives she takes just like him, which brings a tear to her eye. Aizen notices Sagiri and interprets this as her not ready for the upcoming task. However, Aizen is corrected by her as Sagiri states her resolve to kill him. With 10 criminals left standing, the retainer declares the massacre to be over and has each of them paired with an assailant as they head towards the uncharted island to find the elixir of life. In a flashback, Gabimaru tells Sagiri about the time he witnessed the chief of Iwagakure demonstrate his immortality by keeping himself standing while having his shinobi inflict fatal damage to his body with weapons, along with the story about how the chief drank a medicine he acquired long ago from a land across the sea to achieve this immortality. Gabimaru believes that the elixir of life truly exists, but doubts that it is on the island they land ashore on. While walking, Sagiri becomes captivated by the beautiful scenery, but hears Gabimaru's opposite opinion on how he believes that the environment is unnatural and that they should be cautious. After seeing Gabimaru remove the ropes keeping his hands bound, Sagiri tells him that he is not allowed to have his hands freed while on the mission and orders him to tie them again. Gabimaru complains about the rule being ridiculous to follow and further complains about the supplies he was given being even useless. This prompts Sagiri to draw her sword close to his neck and make it clear to him that she is not his ally on the mission and will execute him if he does not get in line. Having no other choice, Gabimaru complies with Sagiri to bind his hands again. However, the two are interrupted by Warp Kian, who sends Gabimaru flying back with a thrown iron ball. Kian becomes disappointed at how easy it was to take out Gabimaru, but sees him back on his feet unharmed, as the shinobi had dislocated his neck upon anticipating the attack. Gabimaru then points out to Sagiri that Kian's hands are untied. Although she believed that that was not the main issue, Sagiri asks Kian's monitor Yamada Isaman Kisho as to why his assigned convict's hands were unrestrained. Kisho answers that he can simply tie his hands when the time comes to make the trip back and that it avoids having to argue with his convict. He then reprimands Sagiri for following the rules, which he claims is why she is the lowest ranked assailant in their clan, and proceeds to tell Gabimaru her place only for Sagiri to cut him off since she believed that it wasn't the time to have such a discussion. Kian becomes insulted with Gabimaru ignoring him, but takes this as an opportunity to test all of his weapons out on him. While Gabimaru tells Kian that it would be a waste of time to fight each other since their other competitors will get ahead of them, the Sohai believes that the best way to start off the mission is to kill the other criminals first so that he can take his time searching for the elixir. With Sagiri and Kisho allowing the criminals to fight each other, since they are merely monitors, Gabimaru is given no choice but to defend himself against Warped Kian. Before having him fight, Sagiri demands that he bind his hands, much to his annoyance. While busy doing what Sagiri ordered, Gabimaru stands still and pays Kian no mind as he attacks him with a barrage of weapons. After finishing retying his hands, Gabimaru uses a spear as leverage to lift Kian up in the air and kicks one of his weapons at his chest. Despite being pierced, Kian stands up alive as he reveals to have armor attached to his body. He then becomes excited to continue with his fight against Gabimaru. Shortly after, Warped Kian is killed by Gabimaru using his weapons. Having wasted enough time, Gabimaru requests to Sagiri to continue with his assignment to look for the elixir of life. With his convict dead, Kisho leaves off with Kian's head as he is relieved of his duties. Sagiri warns Kisho to be careful on his way back home since 60 men had went missing on the island, but is asked if she should really be worried about others at the moment, explaining to her that the criminals have already made their move on both land and sea, regardless of the rules set for them on the mission, since the only that matters to the shogun is acquiring the elixir of life. He then offers to execute Gabimaru so she may leave as well. However, he is prevented from drawing his sword by Gabimaru as the shinobi tells him that he has wasted enough of his time talking and that all he cares about is returning to his wife. Kisho tells Gabimaru that it would be wise for him to quicken the pace since he predicts that over time the number of criminals will gradually dwindle down and will leave the shogun having no choice but to contact Iwagakure for assistance as reported. Before making his leave, Kisho informs Sagiri that this mission will supposedly determine the next head of their clan and warns her to not let her guard down around the criminals. Sagiri takes Kisho's word into account since she has yet to fully understand Gabimaru's true nature, but holds this off and asks Gabimaru which direction he would like to go. However, after sensing hostility, Sagiri quickly intercepts a sword attack from Gabimaru in an attempt at killing her. In a flashback, the Iwagakure chief looks down on Gabimaru's deceased parents for making the decision to raise their newborn outside of Iwagakure and decides to take care of Gabimaru himself. He then tells the infant Gabimaru that he must abandon his emotions to avoid becoming weak and uses his parents as examples. As she clashes swords with him, Sagiri reminds Gabimaru that killing her would be in violation of the mission. Gabimaru tells her that based on what Kisho said earlier, the only importance on the mission is obtaining the elixir of life, and has decided to take her life in order to not be weighed down and prevent Iwagakure from being involved if time runs out. Sagiri believes that she is authorized to execute him, however, she finds herself hesitating. Gabimaru also finds himself hesitating to end Sagiri's life and ends up having a memory of his wife advising to accept his emotions as she believes that that is true strength and memories of him killing as a result of his emotions. After hesitating to commit to making a lethal blow aimed towards Sagiri's neck, Gabimaru becomes worried that he won't receive the pardon or survive. However, after he remembers his chief's words to him in the past about ridding his emotions to become strong, Gabimaru's mind becomes clear to snap Sagiri's blade. Sagiri then acts fast to block Gabimaru's next attack by using her scabbard. Gabimaru suggests to Sagiri that she should give up since she can no longer hope to win, but adds that her death will make him feel uneasy in the end. Hearing this statement, Sagiri mocks Gabimaru for contradicting his emotionless nature, which ends up reminding him of who he is. While being pinned down on the ground, Sagiri hears Gabimaru accepting the fact that he is Gabimaru the Hollow and is prepared to kill her like he has done with his other victims, causing Sagiri to see how dangerous he is. However, Gabimaru becomes hesitant to bring his sword down on her, as his wife's influence ends up overriding the Iwagakure chief's influence over him. This then causes him to become frustrated with himself, as he believes that he has no chance of surviving and seeing his wife again if he gives into his emotions. Seeing this side of him, Sagiri realizes that Gabimaru is not truly a person devoid of emotion, as he has been grieving over the lives he has taken ever since the two met, and has also come to realize that watching him has allowed her to face her own emotions. Feeling empathic, Sagiri states to Gabimaru that she believes that strength comes from embracing emotions, which he connects back to his wife's words and starts to bring the scabbard up around the blade of his sword. While she believes that she has the right to execute him, Sagiri tells Gabimaru that she will overlook his actions as she wishes to see him face his emotions in an attempt to reclaim his life, while also wanting to face her emotions as well. Finally, Sagiri tells Gabimaru that he is not his old self as she puts his sword back in its scabbard. Meanwhile, the criminal Gantetsusei and his Yamada Asaemon land on the island to find man-made statues. Gantetsusei then notices a human-faced butterfly has stung his left hand. Realizing what that meant after remembering in shock back to when the blue solitaire was put on display at the gathering, Gantetsusei quickly cuts off his left hand and warns the Asaemon, who becomes shocked to see his hand turning into bark. Gantetsusei then becomes excited as the human-faced butterflies and centipedes start to swarm around them, but looks up in shock to see a giant suddenly appearing, which he comments is interesting. On Gabimaru and Sagiri's end, the two find themselves approached by a strange, six-armed fish creature. Gabimaru then tells Sagiri to stay back as he prepares to face it himself.